Subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the bell icon for the latest film interviews, features, and recommendations on the movies that matter.
Mira, I want to start by saying, you said that Vikram Seth's novel had a lived-in voice when you first read it in 1993. For you, you said you read it twice because I felt like I didn't want to leave my best friend. Is exactly what you said about it. You said it was a world that you knew, but you also longed for. And I want to say it's so evident from watching the series. You can see that this means something to the maker. You can see the affection for the characters, the nostalgia for a time gone by, and for a different way of life even. But were you ever overwhelmed, Mira, or even intimidated by just the scale of the undertaking? I mean, you have 110 characters. This is a story that spans some years. It's across 4 or 5 cities. Was it ever overwhelming or intimidating just what you had got yourself into?
No, not in that sense, because frankly, I also love actors, as you may glean, right? And I love working with people, and I know several and discovered several. So what I first wanted was just to be with them, was to inhabit, to find the people who would play these 110 characters. And that actually, there were 2 things that kept me going in the challenges that, of course, there were many. One was the pull of the music and working using music as a very much of a layering fluidity, of these different worlds. But secondly, but not even second as in 1 and 2, but alongside, it was the love of actors. It was the love of knowing that I could just have, and thankfully so many great actors are in Suitable Boys, sometimes even for 2 scenes and sometimes for 1 scene. And then sometimes these 2 young people whom I didn't know existed, whom I found and I just fell for. So for me, it's like that. I have to fall very, very hard, and then I just want to, take the maza, really juice it. So that's how it was, in fact. So it was not so much intimidating, it was the draw. So it was so difficult, Rajiv, because it fell apart even while we were making it. It fell apart for the first year, and I didn't know how long it would carry on, and we lost people and all of this, and I didn't know how long I could carry on in that state. But it was the draw of this great talent that you have on this screen, and several others who somehow all came on the ride, and it was the draw also of evoking that time that I had been born in. I was born 10 years later, but I grew up in like Prem Nivas. I grew up in exactly almost that bungalow. My father was a civil servant, and we lived like that. So everything, the screen doors and how they rattled, the staff, the peons, the khata wala who takes behind the minister who chases, all that is my childhood. And so just to be able to do that was beautiful, but also to do that plus several other things, because it's so many worlds in Suitable, and like all my films, they are circles of life, and that's what Vikram has given us. And over time in our country, which all of us as Indians must remember, because despite all the troubles of partition, despite the bloodshed, we had this incredible syncretic interwoven culture, which is very, very much being challenged at the moment. But our young people, we all must remember that we came from a cloth that was deeply interwoven and must remain so.
That's so true. Ishaan and Tanya, Mira, of course, found that personal connect to the story and to the time that it's set in. You're younger. You weren't born when the story was set. What did you find yourself responding to when you got the job? In fact, Ishaan, weren't you originally offered a different part? Weren't you meant to be one of Lata's suitors originally?
No, never. Always Maan.
Okay.
The only part I ever read for was Maan. I think at one point Mira Di perhaps flirted with the idea for a fleeting moment, but I think she dropped it herself quite quickly.
No, very quickly, because he was going off and I was just, anyway, we won't get into that, but he was Maan. There is only one Maan, that fellow.
Right.
I think obviously I haven't personally experienced anything even close to the period that we were portraying in the show. I have heard stories, grown up hearing stories. We are all deeply, rooted people in our culture. I come from a family of literature, and I mean, people who are conscious and passionate individuals, people who care about their country, patriotic in the true sense. So I've heard a lot of stories about our country and how it came into its own. But really, what did it for me was the evocative nature of the um, just the fabric of the show. Be it the music, be it Kavita Seth's ghazals, be it the costume design, the production designs by Stephanie, be it just the way that she looked at things. It was very immersive. It felt immersive. It allowed an actor to work in an immersive manner. So for me, it was the evocative nature of the brilliance of these distinguished artists and technicians who came together to create this show. That really was my in. And then, I mean, it was so very well defined both in the book and the script, that the character, his environment, his motivations, his sort of understanding, his philosophy, it was all written in to some degree. So I think that helped a lot.
Tanya, you were a copywriter when Mira locked in on you. Out of about
Yes.
500 other actresses who were being considered.
Yeah.
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 Yes, yes. I remember when I went in for my first reading with Dilip Shankar sir, I did not have any idea what the project was. I mean, what I was auditioning for. And then he told me that it was for a suitable boy. I had obviously heard a lot about the book, but I hadn't read it myself. But when I read the scene with Sir, it was a scene where Lata and Malti, Lata is coming out of her classroom and she's complaining to Malti about having her own opinions and how she wants to voice them and for the world to hear it. And this professor of her who wants to suppress her. And when I read that scene with him, I identified a lot with Lata. And it was very surprising for me because I never sort of, I mean, it could be my own preconceived notions as well. But I never thought for a girl in the 1950s to have such strong opinions and to be like to have a mind of her own and also like inserting herself in a way. So for me, that was the intrigue to know more about Lata. And then I started reading the book, and it's written in such a beautiful manner. I mean, it's so descriptive, and I am a literature student myself. And when I started reading it, it draws you in. You just can't leave it. You just want to be immersed in that world. And then after that, I had my Skype call with Mira Nair. I still did not think that I had any shot at it, but it was Mira's passion, in all honesty. When she talked about the characters, when she talked to me about the way she wanted to narrate it, and the way she saw the world, and she saw that story, and the way she saw Lata, it sort of, I transitioned from that I don't have a shot at it to a desperation that please make me a part of it. I just want to, even if it's a thing, I just want to be with Lata, whatever it may be.
Mira, how do you know when you found the person? Do you know that eureka moment when you found Tanya and Ishaan? I mean, yeah. Please tell. Please tell.
Absolutely, I do. And I don't let anyone deter me from that knowledge. And sometimes it's painful because you don't know whether they'll come to you. But in this case,
Mm.
everybody, came. And well, with Tanya, with Lata, Lata was especially, I mean, Ishan I met early on, like a year before we began shooting, I think. He was, right, in 2018 we met. And I was so clear,
Yeah,
but not knowing when the film would start and whether he would be around at that
it was
time. And
actually
that
March, I think March or Feb of 2018.
2018.
It was a long
Yeah,
time ago.
yeah. So he was very early on. The first person cast was Tabu, because she's my girl, and I literally arrive in Bombay. We speak to each other almost every time, and we have dinner, and And Tabu in life, I don't know, you must know her, is like very
Yeah,
different from Saida
she is
Bai. And
completely.
she's a hoot basically. तो वो hoot shoot
Yes.
में मैंने उसी वक्त बना दिया Saida Bai, and she just like she was so loyal about waiting because we didn't know. But Tanya, the Lata really was the hardest person to cast because I'm very confident with young actors and people who'd not faced the camera even before. But the quality in Lata had to be someone who had not been there and done that, like most young
Mm,
actresses today in India are. They've all seen the world,
yeah.
they've seen everything,
Yeah.
and that to be still the dewdrop, which is not to be only innocent and chui mui at all, because I
Mm,
can't
mm,
stand that, but to be the dewdrop who has not seen the world but has a feisty intelligence inside that
yes.
is self-possessed basically. But that has to work, that combination of that dewdrop. I call Tanya dewdrop in action, and it really is a ineffable quality. You don't have this quality in young modern women anywhere here. Actually, the other contender for Lata's part was oddly enough a South Asian woman from California, who was my
Wow.
assistant, and she looked like Madhubala, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And even though she was from here, she still had that quality, but she wasn't. I mean, it was when I saw Tanya, it was so clear. I saw her first in a silly photograph, standing like this with dark circles under her eyes, like she just like that. And I immediately said to Dilip, "Who is this person?" And he started apologizing for her dark circles, and I said, "No, no, forget about that. We'll just get there." And then for me, it was really clear because she's so much that essence, of someone who's wide-eyed about the world but who's totally self-possessed, and of course looks like a dream. So in the eyes, it's very expressive. Everything is very beautiful. But once when then we got the suitors, the contenders for the suitors next to her, and then I could see what she was doing, like how she made them come alive, frankly. And that
Mm,
was so for me. It was very clear. And fortunately, there was no battles to fight on this. Everyone was in consensus. We just had to prove it by asking Tanya to work with Kabir, Haresh, and Amit, which two of them she met in the auditions. Yeah, and so
right.
it was really a big thing. And but it took a year, Rajiv. It took a whole year.
Well, one of the things I think is so great about it is the language. How many times have we seen an American production or British production that's shot in India, and we cringe because the characters
Yes.
don't speak in the way that they should. They're forced to speak in English, even two characters that would never speak in English. And it was just
I
such a
know.
relief watching
Oh,
watching
thank
them
you.
speak differently to different people, watching, Maan
Yeah.
Kapoor speak in Hindi to Bauji and speak in English to his
Yeah.
friend and speak in Urdu to
Yes.
Saida Bai. Did
Exactly.
you have to fight for that, given that this was,
Yes.
originally, I thought you might have, yeah.
Very much. Yeah, I had to fight actually, gently but firmly, because I thought that Vikram had done such an extraordinary work in the novel to get our voices, to get the anglicized India right, to get the swinging Calcutta right, to get even the rural stuff right. But rural and Saida's world, I heard it in Urdu. I heard it in Avdi. I mean, it
Mm,
has to be that, right? It has to. Her whole craft and seduction comes out of actually language and poetry. So uh,
correct.
while so and of course for me the music was so much more important than it was to the BBC initially, and then they learned that this is the my way in, but then
Right.
the funda of how why would she sing and comment all the time through her music in Urdu and not in and then speak in English. So it was a beautiful battle that they came around to. Firstly, I was supported by Vikram, who
Right.
thanked me for as he called it, translating it back, uh,
Mm,
and and then rural India, it had to be like you hear it,
yeah.
and then I had to create a kind of situation whereby Saida herself could go between English in Hindustani, which would have which we created as a little bit of a subplot of and it fitted in with her work. It's not something unusual. Begum Akhtar was the same. She was Akhtari Bai before she became Begum Akhtar, and so on. So yes, that was very important to me. Very important to me.
I mean, I personally think that it is one of the most fantastic tools for an actor. If you have good command over language, and sometimes you're gifted with a part or a job that allows you to use that. I think Miradi and I defined Maan's language early on. We figured out, she said to me, he's like the Doon school kid of the family. He of course has had a westernized sort of education, and those are his sensibilities. His best friend is a Nawabzada who's just returned from London. He studied there. So that's one side to his personality. And then of course at home, he would speak to his mother in Hindi. Because his mother would very rarely ever, speak in English unless it would be a very formal occasion, and she were interacting perhaps with Mahesh Kapoor's colleagues and friends and peers. So that, and then the whole theme of Urdu, learning Urdu. We are all born and bred, Indians. We speak Hindustani. There is. There's almost very less distinction between Hindi and Urdu. So Hindustani is the language that we speak normally. So he would be able to speak Urdu because he's grown up in the Nawabzada's house, in the Nawab's house, and so he has been exposed to that culture quite intimately. But obviously he wouldn't have learnt his alphabet, his alif be te. He wouldn't have learnt Urdu formally. So that then is another side to his personality, because that's what Saida is asking of him, to make himself more familiar with her culture, with who she is intrinsically as a person. So yeah, I mean, there are these various sides to his personality. Even the way that he speaks with Rashid is very interesting, because it's almost sort of slightly more sophisticated way than Rashid would speak, even though he's his Urdu teacher, because that's the Urdu he would have heard at the Nawabzada's house. And so it's a very intricate balance, and I really enjoyed playing that a lot, because for me the justification of why he's speaking in English here and why he's transitioning to Hindi and Urdu here was down pat. I had defined that for myself, so it didn't feel unnatural at any point making those switches. That was important. Otherwise, it could have sounded, weird, contrived, maybe.
Tanya, Vikram Seth has said of Lata that you wonder if she can make up her mind about a boy, or whether her mind will be made up for her. And there is that beautiful moment, which I think is so lovely, where in the show where you have that dream sequence where she's sort of being serenaded by all three of them, and you realize she's in this conundrum of which guy do I pick. I mean, did you feel, what you felt for her? Did it come from a place of affection or empathy, really, for what she was going through, in a sense?
I really empathized with her, actually, because I understood this young girl who's torn between her passion, her first love, this sort of fascination that she has with second suitor, and a calmness that comes with third suitor. So there's a very different relationship that Lata had with each one of them. And each one of them brought out a very different shade and very different side to Lata, which was very interesting for me, because these interactions are that's how you mostly learn about Lata, and that's how you see Lata. And like Miradi said earlier on, it's about this energy that is bouncing off of each other, these scene partners that they have. Like Lata with Kabir is a very different Lata than you would see with, let's say, Harish or with Amit. And that I feel like, obviously, and all three of them are so charming. So she was torn, definitely. But I think Lata is that girl who knew from the start what she wanted. And I think when Lata has a mind made up, she would go for it no matter what. So she is a very headstrong girl. And I've always seen her as that she's passionate, but she's intellect, like she is wise. And you see Lata sort of grow in this journey from this naive young university student who
Right.
just brushes off the idea of getting married at all to sort of having three suitors to select from, and this conversation that she's having with her sister that everything is going wrong, this was never like a plan for me. But I think love happened for Lata in a very organic, in a very authentic manner. So I see Lata's maturity and her growth in this journey through whatever, through its three suitors. And yes, I did empathize with her because I would be torn and wanting, like having to choose between these three very charming men. But I think Lata was strong, Lata was wise, and she made her own decision.
Mira, I have to ask: did Vikram Seth come to set, and were you not able to persuade him to do a cameo like you got Jhumpa to do in The Namesake, or have we missed the cameo?
Yes, they Vikram and I are also old friends, which is very nice and
Right.
helpful throughout the thing. And yes, he came to set once for a couple of days in Lucknow and just enjoyed being around, these guys coming to life in his thinking, and really enjoyed it. Um, I didn't ask him. I don't. I'm very intuitive. I know when people want to be in front of the camera and when they don't. And it was never going to be.
Right.
But I did ask him if he, Shantum, his brother, who's my original friend, is in the wedding, and
He's in the wedding.
Aradhana, his sister, is a MLA, a progressive MLA in the Legislative Assembly scenes. So I love to include the family and the author, but I didn't ask him because he could have done whatever he wanted. Um, and he had think made it quite clear that he's not into it, but I would have made something fun with him. But his voice, I mean, I my for me the most important thing was that he would be happy seeing what we were doing, and he really was. He was actually kind of blown away, and unfortunately that stayed that way. And we were much in close touch in post production, sharing cuts and sharing things like that. But he didn't want to be in it. But we have the other saints in it for
Thank
him.
you so much. Thank you. It's a wonderful show. It's really an immersive, transportive experience. I pretty much
Thank
watched the whole thing in one go. I completely got into it.
Oh,
All the best. I can't wait to sort of watch it again.
thank
Yeah,
you so
it's really
much.
lovely. Thank you.
It's a
Thank you to both of you.
cornucopia
You're so
of
good in it.
they're
Thank you.
amazing in it, and it's a cornucopia of like extraordinary actors. It's extraordinary,
Yeah,
and
it really
there's
is a
so many
great
people
ensemble.
like from Shahana to Manoj Pawa. I ran into him in
Yeah.
a restaurant, and he agreed to play the Raja of Mad, and I used to get so excited every time he appeared, because he would do things. I loved that to work with the
Yeah.
greatest talents in our country. Yeah.
It
So
Rasika,
really is
thank
a
you,
stunning
Raj.
Shori,
ensemble.
Vijay Varma,
Thank
Vijay
you.
Raj, so many of them.
Vijay
Yeah.
Varma,
Yeah.
Vijay, everyone. Sheba,
It
I
really
mean,
is a
Sheba
dream team.
is a dream team.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't suffer
Thank you.
for a minute. Thank you.